welcome back to another episode of Project Yellow Podcast. In today's episode, I want to introduce you to Innovatemap product managers and product researcher Derek Onay. In this episode, we talk about the misconceptions of roles in a tech company and how it is not just about writing the code and that you don't need any tech background, mentioning how having soft skills are very beneficial not only within tech companies but any company. Thank you for supporting Project Yellow and enjoy this episode. Let's begin. All right. Thank you for showing up, Derek. First, can you tell us about your background and how you get into product management or product design, and in your college, what what were your majors back in college? What kind of projects did you do back in college?
Yeah, so my name is Derek Onay. I'm currently a product manager and product designer at Innovatemap. I've always been pretty close to technology. I have an older brother who, um, when computers were first coming out, he was already working. So I was introduced to it from a very young age and always had sort of an interest in how and why things happened on the internet. And that turned into, me taking that and running with it through college, where I did study computer science as a major, but I had a minor in physics and in German. So I like not just digital creation, but also physical creation, hence the physics. And yeah, I just then I, finished up, started doing design work, um, and then, did a little bit of development, went back to design, went into product management, went back to design, and now I sit on this kind of ladder where I do a little bit of both. And it's been really great.
Yeah, can you talk about the projects that you did when you were in college, uh, for you to get into product management or product design or development?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So when I was probably in sixth and seventh grade, so way before college, me and a buddy played a game called Neopets, which was like an online, like, pet game. And there was an aspect of it that allowed you to create custom web pages for your like guild or clan. And you could skin those with HTML and CSS. And, since we were invested in the game as like, you know, 13-year-olds, we thought, hey, this would be a fun way to take like the thing we're already enjoying and start to learn how to build onto that and create custom pages. So we have like floppy disks that probably don't work anymore, but that have the old things saved on it. So we started getting into design probably in, oh, uh, 2008, 2009. And then from there, I got into high school, started doing more web design type of tasks on the side with, the same friend, and turned into then in high school that we actually got some contracts to do some work. So it basically was an interest early on, and taking the things we were already doing and finding ways to apply technology to it where they allowed. So it's not like we had to build the whole platform. We just took one piece of it and we're allowed to change it. It's something in, some games, even today, I think it's called Lura, is like a programming language that allows you to like style the UI inside of games you're playing. So, there was a game, some arena game that you could play, but if you wanted to, you could go into the code behind the scenes and you weren't actually changing how the game was played, but you could change like how the menus looked and where things were at in like the HUD. And I think that's something I found was really valuable to like unlock this like passion that I wasn't told to do these things, it was just, how can I make this a little more custom to me? And that was like what got me on track to start getting into design. And then, getting into college, I spent a lot of time learning like the actual craft of what it takes to build a product, and write code efficiently, and like not just write like the look and feel, but also like the behind the scenes backend interfacing with the database, and very quickly realized I don't want to do that. And I would rather focus on kind of the problems that need to be solved, and really just found like through design, you can solve some really amazing problems that you don't even need to write the code for. And so that was kind of my transition into then working. We did some projects, there's always the simple ones, but I think something I would tell people that are just starting out or looking for things is like and I think I told you this before, is like find one thing that you think could be solved with technology and like just try it. And there's so much like YouTube, like how do I stand up a web app, or how do I build a website? And then that never is super exciting. But if you take the how to and the tutorial they show you, and then take something you care about and combine them, then you get a lot more value out of it. And it becomes more exciting to work on. And you start to see like, once you do the simple thing, then you're like, oh, well, how can I make this just a little bit better? And you just keep like adding little things, which is something that really does happen with, products that exist in the wild. They didn't start that big. They started very small, doing one thing, and then now they do 1,000 things.
Definitely. Next question that I have is, you have a lot of experience in product roles here and there. You have a research experience. You have a design experience, management experience. Can you tell me more about all of those experience, and how should college students right now think about a product roles in technology companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's kind of a misnomer. It's something that isn't talked about enough, but there's so much in these product companies that like everyone thinks is just writing the code. And I just want to be very honest that like there's so much that can be done and needs to be done that doesn't involve actually writing the code. And you mentioned a couple of them there, doing research just to understand the problem. Like every good product solves one or multiple problems for real people. And so I think under being able to understand or care, have a passion to understand why this is a problem for someone is something that is super valued. So that's that research portion. And you can make a whole career out of just being passionate about helping people solve their problems. You don't have to create the product, but if you can just understand their problem first and bring that back to someone who can build it, that's a role. Like that's something that people need, that's something that companies need. And if you can start there. Going one step further, then it's like, okay, well, how do I actually translate this research into a product, right? And now it's strategy. Like, what are we trying to solve it for everyone? Are you just trying to solve it for a certain segment? Are we still tackling the right problem? Now you're getting more into that product thinking, like what is going to solve the problem the best and the quickest most of the time for someone? And then how does that impact like, a business, from a product lens? Yes, I can come up with a product that's really great, but if it can't be sold, then, or if no one wants to buy it, then is that really what you should be focusing your time and efforts on? Right now, you're thinking more about the product. And once you've gotten to that point and you validated it with research, now you can start to introduce a designer and an engineer and say, okay, maybe we don't need to use the engineer yet. We can just start with design, sort of paint the picture. Right now we're talking in a lot of words, but at some point someone has to, paint that picture to talk about. And then, from there you could say go right into development and, hand it off to some engineers. And I think those are some like very distinct roles. And then even further than that, if you're not really interested in like what it takes to build it, there's the other side of every good company and tech company particularly, which is like supporting that. So now it's off the ground, you and I are using it and we have an issue. Who are we talking to when we call? and that's another role. If you just want to help people get better at using the product because it's valuable to them, the client success and customer service side of it is a role that doesn't always require a whole lot of technology, but it's very important to the success of a business. And I think that's a role that, I always like to mention the analogy that, like, I have a friend who did event planning. So she's very detail oriented, very good at like building out schedules for individuals, keeping them on track. And I was like, you could do all this instead of for like the hotel industry for a tech company, and your hours may be a little more flexible in her particular case, and she's like, well, I don't have any like tech background. And I'm like, you don't really need that. It's like, what is your skill set? And it's a lot of, this like, what I would call like implementation and client success. And like, if you can do those things, there are companies in the technology space that also need that role, or else they wouldn't be successful. And so I think they don't talk a lot about, you hear tech company, you think you have to write the code or you have to be a product manager. But then you like go one step deeper. I was like, well, you could design it, or you could do research, and you could also support it, or you could be, maybe you're into technology, but you don't know how to write code and you just love data. Why not be an analyst and just, handle performance? And those are, I think, some of those like secondary level roles that are so critical, but you never hear about them. People don't talk about them as much because they just hear tech and think I have to write code and I can't. So why would I even bother?
That is perfect. So I think it will be good to talk about skills for product roles in technology companies. Like, what kind of skills college students should focus on right now?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Going into college, there's a lot of change, right? A lot of times you're either off on your own, living by yourself for the first time, or, you're commuting, which is, a whole other dynamic of, going to college and then having to leave and drive home and get back into, like your family setting, and then you're coming back, so I think the most important is actually like communication skills, right? And like the soft skills that you learn in college first, like first off, are like the most important. So you need to learn how to interact with other people, because whether you work in a tech company or anywhere else, like you're going to be interacting with individuals every day. And so being able to listen and digest what you're hearing before responding or reacting. You want to respond, you don't want to react. So internalize what you hear, think about how you want to respond, then respond. That's going to already make any role you get into easier. So I think that's a really important one. Being confident and okay with making a mistake is, I think, it's a soft skill, but it does take some training. Like, I may not like what I'm about to show you, but I need to show you. So here it is. And, your feedback and critique is going to help me to make it better for the next time, regardless of what that is. If I wrote a paper and I wanted you to proofread it, I would hope that you're not going to hold back. Like, if I wrote something wrong, you're going to be like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, because there's no hard feelings. It's just, I need your help. So being able to get that feedback and internalize it, to improve, I think, is something to learn. And then from like a general, like getting into product, or design standpoint, I think, there's some tools, but that are helpful. The tools change a lot. So, getting like a base understanding, at least from a design perspective, in like what resources are valuable to you, what are not, where to go, what are like the basic theories of design that you need to learn. Be it, do I need to know color theory, or how to, best use positive and negative space? A lot of the things you can take from art class and then apply back into digital product, I think, is something from a design perspective that's helpful. From a product management perspective, it's really being able to be organized and, work on your organizational skills in your personal life, and then, bring that into aspects of your schoolwork. And if you do group projects, even if you're not confident, like try to be the leader in it, because those are the skills that are going to be more helpful as you get into larger work settings.
Yeah, I think it's perfect to talk about tools now. So can you tell me what kind of tools you're mostly using while doing design and also research and management? So
Hmm.
in those product roles.
Yeah. So we'll start with research. I think something that is super helpful. I mean, you have like your basic word processing tools, which is great, but I think, one that I've really particularly enjoyed is Dovetail as of late. I think that's been a really helpful tool to keep everything in one spot as it pertains to research. There are other options, but I think the transcription bit is super helpful. So that's there. Then like we've been using PowerPoint and Pitch. Pitch is really great. It's like a new presentation tool that I have been fond of. So that's been really nice. And then going into design, I would say like this number one, like just a pen and paper to start is always helpful. It's something I keep at all times. Use a pen and paper, write down things so you don't forget them. Draw your sketches before you spend the time in a digital tool. But I think some of the tools that, from a design perspective, I found really helpful are like obviously Figma has been an industry leader, but I also enjoy some of the functionality Adobe's put out with XD. So it's finding the balance there. Figma's been the leader now for the last couple of years, and I don't think they're going anywhere. So if you want to get into design, learning that tool, do the tutorials. There's a bunch of resources like behance.net/live, I think it is. And they do like, you can watch someone live design a project for an hour. Whether that's a digital product, whether that's an illustration, it's a really cool resource. Highly recommend it. And they're just fun, engaging. They're professionals that are showing you how they work. And so you can learn little tidbits from them, or you can follow along while they're doing it to like actually use the tools. Um, yeah. And I think otherwise, product management's a lot more in the communication and organization. So finding the right thing there is always up in the air, but having something that you can organize everything for a project and a product in one spot's always going to be helpful.
I want to ask you about, what kind of opportunities do you think, or do you see for the future of, product roles in technology companies, and what tips would you give to students who want to get into product roles?
Yeah. I mean, opportunities is a tough one. I wish I had the crystal ball to tell me what's coming next, but I think, we're going to see some trends in, you know, artificial intelligence doing or helping solve certain problems. It's something that I am not super familiar with. I know and see the functionality. I've been trying to find ways to use it as a tool. And I think that's a really important piece is like, you cannot replace the human element in any setting. You know, you need to use it as a tool to either get you started or to improve what you've done or ideate on where to go next. But, just relying on a technology to do that isn't always going to give you the whole picture. So I think it's going to be super popular over the next couple of years. So I would say figure out one aspect of AI where you can benefit from it and then continue to learn. And, if you enjoy it, lean on it and find ways to apply it. Tell people that when you're interviewing, or if you're curious, find companies that are looking for people in those spaces. And that, I think from a just general advice perspective, though, is like empathy is huge. It's your job and your life is around people, like some like yourself, some not like yourself, some you like, some you won't. And you need to be able to navigate that effectively to be the best, person you can be. And once you're, working on becoming a better person and seeing their perspective and not just judging out the gate, like trying to understand why they have that perspective and then navigating that is going to make your life so much easier. So just be open-minded, listen well, um, practice a lot, and you'll be successful. It'll take time. I would be lying if I said, getting a job is as simple as just applying, but luck is involved. So don't be discouraged. Just work through it, try, ask questions, network with people, meet people, ask for introductions to other people that so if I know you, maybe I ask you someone that you think I would have a good conversation with. Doesn't have to be for a job. Could just be, hey, I'm just curious, like what you do and why you do it. And that's a good way to start those connections and get the wheels spinning.
Any closing thoughts or any question that I should have asked you?
Um, I mean, really, I'm just going to harp on it again, but like, I think empathy is so important. Like, and read some books, like I'm not big on reading, but I do read from time to time, and it's generally around like what you would call maybe, I guess, self-improvement. But read some books, take what you want out of them. Reading it alone is going to help you in a lot of different ways, but be an empathetic person, and it'll come back and help you.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you everyone for listening to this episode. My name is Daniel Tang. I am the producer and the host. Amos Young is the scriptwriter, and Elijah Lindgren is the video editor. I'll see you guys again on next Wednesday. You're listening to Project Yellow